supreme wisdom. Student enrollment, that's what the class of God students enroll in. Supreme wisdom, I study it hard. The study of myself is the study of God. Supreme wisdom, write your letter, get your X. Supreme wisdom, that's what you'll be getting next. Supreme wisdom, some call it the lessons, but I call it life, actual facts, no guessing.
In the name of Allah, beneficent and merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who intervened in our affairs in the person of Master Quran Muhammad. I bear witness of his raising one up among us to lead us, teach us, and guide us out of the triple darkness of falsehood into the light of truth. That one that I speak of is none other than the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I further bear witness of their divine reminder in our midst today. The one that stands in the midst of Allah's chosen people, roaring loud as the lion that he is.
Yes, sir.
Our leader, teacher, and guide, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It is in their name do I greet my beloved family and the greeting words of peace. We say it in Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum.
Sir.
All praise be to Allah. How's the family feeling?
Fine, sir.
All praise be to Allah. Well, tonight we're going to be continuing our Wednesday Foundation class with a series titled The Proper Handling of People. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us that the black man and woman has to be totally re-educated into the knowledge of self, God, and the devil. The reason being that we have to be totally re-educated because today we look at our condition and we see that our minds are filled with false ideas and false concepts that has us acting totally inappropriate
Yes, sir.
with one another. And so we need medicines to cure us of the ills that's affecting and plaguing us on a daily basis. So you and I in the Nation of Islam have been given or blessed to receive an abundance of lessons to help us in this re-education process. So tonight, what we're going to do is deal with one of those blessings in the form of a lesson titled The Proper Handling of People. And so we're going to ask the believers to take notes, ask questions, because this is our classroom setting on Wednesday where we grow together as a solid unit.
Yes,
Am I right?
Yes, sir.
So we will embark on a journey in one of these lessons, and it comes under that umbrella of the proper handling of people, but we're going to deal specifically with how not to use our tongues. How not to use our tongues. That is going to be our first series. In the second series, we'll close it out on how we should use our tongues. And so in light of what I said earlier, that we have to be totally re-educated. Unfortunately, the way we use our tongues today, we have to go back to the drawing board and with an eraser and erase a lot of the bad habits that we picked up, unfortunately, that has us speaking so inappropriate today.
Yes, sir.
I almost forgot that I had this clip. Let's see. So we'll begin by defining a few things. So proper is defined as the required type, suitable, or appropriate. Handling, the way that someone deals with a person, event, situation, etc. People, human beings, persons, and tongue. And we're going to deal with this tongue, which has a spiritual and a physical relationship, and we'll deal with that. Tongue, manner or quality of utterance with respect to tone or sound, the sense of what is expressed, or the intention of the speaker. Now, we look a little further now. We're looking at the tongue. Now, we're just going to deal with the physical aspect. The tongue is a muscular organ in the mouth that manipulates food for mastication and is used in the act of swallowing. So we've been taught that for every physical reality, there's a spiritual counterpart.
Yes, sir.
So we see that the tongue is defined as a muscular organ, and our brain is considered a muscle as well. So what we want to do is make sure that these muscles are working out together, right?
Yes, sir.
And so if you're going to build your muscles, for those of us that engage in any type of fitness training, we know that the best way to build muscle is to put some kind of resistance on that muscle. So they call it not just fitness training, they call it resistance training, right? And so what we have to do, we have to understand that as our brain is a muscle and the tongue is a muscle, then we want to continue to resist all the things that we know we shouldn't be putting in our brain, right? That's going to build our brain to be able to correspond with the other muscle, the tongue, in order for us to be able to speak properly with one another. And which also will help us not to use our tongue in the inappropriate way. How not to use our tongues. So we've been taught that when you open your mouth, people can see into our minds. How else will someone know what you or I are thinking if we don't say anything? So our mind is on total display. Yes, ma'am, Sister Deborah. Sister Gabby.
Are you entertaining questions yet?
Oh,
Was that a rhetorical question or was that actually?
Well, this right here is at the top of the lesson. Actually, it's the lesson after the title of the lesson. This is in parentheses, and I don't know who to actually attribute it to, but it's at the top of the lesson. And it says, when you open your mouth, people can see into our minds. What in those words, George, you?
What you had said, you said, how else will we be able to see what's on your mind if not listen to what comes out your mouth?
Right.
And I was offering, I guess, to that rhetorical question, we also can look at your actions as well.
Praise be to Allah. So Sister Gabby said that we can also look at your actions to know what's in your mind. Sister Deborah?
I was having a conversation today, and you know how we talk about, I know what you're thinking, or you try to attribute to, what somebody else is thinking, but you cannot, and it will be unjust for you to try to predetermine what somebody's thinking. You can only know what they're thinking based upon their actions and the pattern of their actions. So, it's like when you speak, that's one level. But, sometimes you speak out of anger, sometimes you speak out, but it's your actions that really tell what's on your mind, more so than just your talk. Some people just get lip service.
And we're definitely going to deal with lip service, because lip service is one of those points that we're going to be learning how not to use our tongue. But also keep in mind that words not only express thoughts, they transform thoughts. And so whatever you see taking place physically, that could, Brother Malik, around this way. Whatever you see taking place physically, it originated with a thought, an idea. Now that thought or idea could have been something originated in that person's own mind, or it could have been a thought or idea that came from someone else that transformed that person's thoughts. They may have been wanting to go this way or the right way, but was influenced by someone else that caused them to go the wrong way. Because somebody did not know the proper way of handling people and did not know the proper way to use their tongue.
Yes, sir.
So during our series, we will discuss scriptures, Holy Quran as well as Bible. We will define words. We will learn how to read people. Part 1, of course, is going to be how not to use our tongues, and part 2 will be how we should use our tongues. And of course, we'll do a review to make sure that everybody gained as much information as possible and it was beneficial and wholesome. Of course, we want to continue to add jewels into our treasure chest to increase our wealth, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that was.
I like it.
And I want to. Looking at this made me just pause and I have to actually think of how grateful I was to receive this help from Sister Deborah with this PowerPoint presentation. Of course, I was a little apprehensive because I never did a PowerPoint presentation. But Sister Deborah took her time and laid everything out. Of course, as she will see, I made a lot of changes. Once I got into the groove, I'm like, oh, this simple? All right. So, sometimes we have to be pushed, over the hurdle of fear. Because I'm like, I tried to do this some years ago, and I said, but, with help,
Oh, yeah.
we gonna make it happen.
Yes, sir.
So, of course, Sister Deborah has that serpent coming out of the mouth and how we should not use our tongues. And of course, we know that the serpent in the Bible, from a biblical perspective, we deal with the serpent in the Old Testament. But later on, we deal with that serpent growing into a dragon. How not to use our tongue. So, number one, do not rail or brawl against anyone. What does this mean? To rail means to scold in harsh, insolent, or abusive language. Brawl, to fight or quarrel in a rough or noisy way. Now, this right here, we're starting out with number one, do not rail or brawl against anyone. Keeping in mind, the best religion that we can practice is what?
Islam.
To do is Islam, which is total submission to the will of God. But in layman terms, to do unto others as you want done unto you.
Right.
That's the best religion to practice. Now, for an insane person that don't, that don't understand love and, don't desire what's natural, then, I mean, hey, we would have to be clear about it, and define it. But for those of us that are rational, people, thinking people, and you say, hey, just treat me like you want to be treated,
right,
and we good, right? So sometimes something can happen to cause us to become frustrated or upset, and instantly, the first word right here, rail, to scold in harsh, insolent, or abusive language, that can take place. So we have to be mindful that we should, in particular, we deal with railing and brawling. We have to be mindful that when we are upset, when our temperature rises, when we're frustrated, when we have the jitters, or we're disturbed by something, we have to pause and give it a second and gather our thoughts before we say what's in our say what's in our head. Sister Deborah?
Those and how the proper handling of people is something that when I came in, is something that the student laborers were given to study, to learn how to handle our people. Because, we're coming from out of the world, where a lot of this was the order of the day. And so we have to show them, something new. And so a lot of times, and I'm just going to speak from a standpoint, for me, not so much here and not so much now, but that really was like the order of the day. How you would handle believers was so rough, so cold, so, and that type of behavior, that develops an atmosphere that, to run people out when people talk to you harsh and abusively and whatnot, and use abusive language. So not just the poor laborers are the laborers, but all of us in the mosque are considered the laborers. So we have to, when we're handling our people, look at that from that perspective.
And see, and also to add to that, that's why when we're given lessons, a lesson of this nature right here is something that all of us should be on. Leadership is important for leadership to know how to use your tongue and how not to. But also, if we are our brother's keeper or our sister's keeper, we have to know the lessons as well to remind each other where we're going wrong at, how we're using our tongue inappropriately, and what things that we should be saying, things we should not be saying. But if nobody has been exposed to the lesson, how will they know? Well, I thought you raised your hand. All right, let's move on. So let's look at some Bible support here, as well as Holy Quran. And obey Allah and His Messenger, and dispute not one with another, lest you get weak-hearted and your power depart. And be steadfast. Surely Allah is with the steadfast. This is in the Holy Quran, chapter 8, verse 46, in the chapter titled Voluntary Gifts. Obey Allah and His Messenger, dispute not one with another, lest you get weak-hearted and your power departs. Our unity, as we've been taught, is more powerful than what? An atomic bomb. So whenever we begin to dispute with one another, we get what? weak-hearted,
Yeah.
right? And what does the Holy Quran says? And our power departs. So the power that we once had before we began to brawl and rail against one another, that power begins to vanish, right? And be steadfast. Surely Allah is with the steadfast. And so the steadfast, to me, as I look at this, the steadfast, those of us that can deal with some friction with one another and endure, right? And persevere and work through that disagreement, that short dissatisfaction, short period dissatisfaction,
Sure.
right? Teach me and I will hold my tongue and cause me to understand wherein I have erred. That's in the book of Job, 6th chapter, verse 24. That's what I was saying earlier about pausing, right? Teach me and I will hold my tongue and cause me to understand. See, when you think about it before you speak it, then most of the time it comes out a whole lot better than if you just let the words fly, right? Because one thing we know, and all of us have been affected, either on the giving end or the receiving end, that once the words come out of your mouth, they out.
Right. Once
somebody receives it, it's in there. And it could be 10, 20, 30 years later, and you might think that person that you shared those words with have forgotten, and because you have forgotten, right? And they will bring it up, right? Because it may not have meant nothing to you because you spoke it, but it affected them to the degree in which it left an indelible print in their mind. It's just that every time your name come up, they don't even have to see you. When your name come up, they think about those harsh words that you spoke.
Yeah.
So we have to be extra careful when we know that.
Sure.
Do not speak evil of others in their absence.
Yeah.
It's a challenge one, isn't it?
That's
Nope.
Now, I said it's a challenging one.
Resistance, huh?
Yeah. Now,
Zero resistance.
Hey,
yeah.
I'm down to speak evil of people in their face.
Yeah. See, and that's consistency. But yes, Brother Thomas.
I have another take on the word evil. It says, do not speak evil of others in their absence. Would truth be considered evil?
No, well,
Because a lot of times when you're speaking about somebody, you might be telling them the truth.
okay.
Somebody else might interpret it as being, you're speaking evil or you're saying something, about the person that you shouldn't say.
That's a good question. Now keep in mind that this is a classroom. That's what this is for, to help us grow, right?
Right.
Now, we have to make sure that whatever we're speaking is truth. It's factual. And it's not a opinion, right?
Right.
That's not supported by truth, facts. So one of the definitions of evil is something that brings sorrow, distress, or calamity.
Okay.
Evil. Sister Dan.
So I was gonna say, well, with that and with you saying the definition, sometimes in telling the truth, your intent can make, the truth that you speak can be out of evil place, even though it's true. What would be the reason you telling a truth for whatever
Motive
purpose?
behind
Yeah,
it.
for whatever purpose, your intent.
Motive behind it.
Yeah.
Sister Deborah.
And the answer to that question is, yes, it can be wrong even though it's true. The reference is Study Guide 18, Rising Above Emotions into the Thinking of God. The minister asked that question, because I remember when I first came into the mosque, we stayed on Study Guide 18 for a year. And I remember a situation going on in my personal life. I'm like, are they not saved? And it's true, but my intent was actually to either defame or slander another person, or either diminish their stature in the eyes of others because of my pain, even though what I was saying was true. So, Study Guide number 18 is your reference. You can, and as Brother Derek goes through that, there's another one to cover what you just said. Do not speak evil of others in their else when they're not there.
And it was beautiful that we looked at the definition of evil, because that's very important. Because if you speak something about someone to someone else, and you could see a person's countenance fall, right? Evil, something that brings sorrow or distress, and a person begins to lose their glow and feel like, you know, like you dropped a load on them now, and all of a sudden now their whole mind is twirling now. You causing them to begin to do gymnastics in their head, and so you've affected that person now. So that's something that we have to think about before we actually, you know, engage in conversing about somebody else. Yeah. So let's look at some biblical as well as Quranic references. O you who believe, avoid most of suspicion, but surely suspicion in some cases is sin. And spy not, nor let some of you backbite others. Does one of you like to eat the flesh of his dead brother? You abhor it, and keep your duty to Allah. Surely Allah is oft returning to mercy. Mercy. That's in Surah chapter 49, verse 12. Proverbs 15:7 says, the lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the foolish doeth not so. Wow. So when we look at it, and for those of us that have been through 1 or 10 or 20 Ramadans, you know, I don't think it's too many verses that you can look at. You may not be able to just call it all the way out, you know, surah and ayat, and say here, here, here. But when you read this, it's like, oh, I read that before, right?
Yes, sir.
So it says, oh, you who believe, avoid most of suspicion. It didn't say all.
Right.
Right? Because sometimes you see something or you think something is going on, and if you know it's going to have an effect on you, you might have to look into what you're suspicious of. Right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, we don't want to be sleeping now while something, you know, a robber's in your house, you know, taking all of your valuable possessions. For surely suspicion in some cases is sin. Why would it be a sin in some cases? Right?
Suspicion.
In some cases it's sin. Why is that? Sister Gay?
Well, I guess in one case, myself, I'm not the authority of this, but if you are suspicious of someone or some situation when you have been given no reason to be suspicious of it. So, I mean, just that you literally had no trigger, you didn't see anything, you didn't hear anything, you didn't come across any information, but you went out of your way to, you know, look into the affairs, you know, looking for something, you know, evil of another person for no other reason. And I'm pretty sure it all stemmed from, you know, one of those, you know, faults of like either jealousy, envy, or something like that. So I'll say, I guess my answer is some of those suspicions without any evidence and any motive of things might arise from envy itself. We know that envy itself is a sin. So if your suspicion is arising out of envy and jealousy, that's how it would be a sin.
Okay. Praise be to Allah. So sin, you was going to say something. So sin, we know that, I mean, there's various definitions, but, you know, for the most part, we think of sin, we think of transgression of the law, right? So sin in some cases is sin, then who are we sinning against, right? We're committing a sin, but actually the transgression is against the brother or the sister that we are suspicious of. We're doing that person wrong, right? Especially if they're innocent,
Right.
or whatever we're suspicious of. And that's why I say it's in some cases, not all cases, right? And spy not, nor let some of you backbite others. Does one of you like to eat the flesh of his dead brother? Wow. Why is the reference dead brother being used here? And so now you abhor it. You hate it because literally you can't even, not even consider or conceive yourself being a cannibal, right?
Right.
You hate to even picture yourself like that. So that right there, those 3 words with that exclamation point should wake us up right there after we read, does one of you like to eat the flesh of his dead brother? That's a question asked to the believers. And instantly you have you hate the even thought of that. You nibbling on something. Can you, physically think about what you're doing, right? Even though you pretty much eating the flesh, not necessarily the flesh, but the spirit, because you're killing the person's spirit and the spirit of those that you're, sharing this propaganda with, perhaps. So let's move forward. Anybody else? Sister Deborah?
I did come in on the end of that, but I think to myself when you were saying that, for what reason do we have that we would fall into, sin of backbiting? For what reason do we have that? Now, we do it all the time. Backbiting, slander, and gossip. I know gossip is just that you have a conversation and it winds up talking about somebody else. It's not something intended. Slander is something that is intentional. And then backbiting is also something that's intentional. But you do it behind. But my question is, as believers, what would make us fall into that type of mindset? Why?
Well, you said as believers. Now, keep in mind that we have declared that we believe, right? We've taken our shahada. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
But the effects of the world and the way we think, even though we've been taught that the brain was created to think right, we don't think right.
Right.
And so, as I said earlier, we have to be totally re-educated. So a lot of the habits, the bad habits that we see, even amongst each other, we know that we came in the mosque, we came in the sacred ark with those bad habits.
So you're saying it's a habit?
That was a bad habit.
So, a bad habit, but
Right.
So some of this that we do is just out of habit.
It was a habit for many of us that grew up a certain way, eating a certain food, in particular pork, right? Certain things, and you come into the nation, you got a certain period of time to clean yourself up. You might have been smoking cigarettes, you might have been drinking alcohol, right? And so the certain things physically, the physical things in terms of habits, we can typically shake those real quick because we find a substitute. And so if you're not, and that's another reason why it's so important for us to be in constant communication with those who are striving to live a better life. In particular, those who, have the same thinking of you, believe in the same God as you, understand the same mission that you're on, right? We're all on a mission, right? And so we have certain things in common. Now, if you divested yourself of those physical bad habits, smoking, drinking, eating pork, or whatever the case may be, the physical thing, you're shaking those, right? And now, so instead of eating pork, you eat more turkey, more chicken, etc. You replace that, right? So instead of drinking alcohol, you drink more tea, might drink more coffee, OJ, right? Instead of smoking a cigarette, marijuana, right? You may watch more TV. Right? So, but the thing is, those are things that we can physically see, right? In terms of the other bad habits, those, the 3 levels of consciousness, right? 3 levels of the mind. The conscious mind, the subconscious mind, right? The unconscious mind. Those are the habits that's all in those 3 levels, right? That's marinating in here. And so it takes a little longer because it's not a physical thing that you are staying away from. It's something that's a part of you. So the only way to eradicate that habit is to replace it with a better. Brother Tom?
I just was going to say right quick 2 points. That passage from the Quran started off as, "O you who believe." If though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking directly to believers. Because in the community and from slavery and stuff, we were programmed and taught to be into gossiping and backbiting. And it's a normal thing. You can go on any corner. There's a can burning with fire. There's people out there spreading gossip, spreading rumor, and we been a people that have been taught to do that to each other.
Right.
Whether it's true or not. We're gonna always have something to say about each other that's off the chart or bad.
Right.
So, as you were saying, coming into these teachings, you know, you have to have a new mind. Because the old one wasn't working.
Right.
And we have to give back that mind to that slave master and to that Negro.
And that's why the message said that we have to be totally re-educated.
Yes, sir.
Right, totally. So here's a few more verses. Psalms 15:3. He that backbiteth not with his tongue, nor doeth evil to his neighbor, nor taketh up a reproach against his neighbor. So I put this in parentheses because earlier, when you read this part, it says, he that backbiteth not with his tongue. So it's saying what he does not do. Who is the he that we're talking about? Who shall abide in thy tabernacle? That's the ones that desires to abide in the house of the Lord. They don't do this. They don't backbite with their tongue. They don't do evil to their neighbor, right?
Right.
And so I wanted to make sure I included that in there so we'll know that who's being referred to, who don't do it. Psalms 34:13. Keep thy tongue from evil and thy lips from speaking what?
God.
God. Wow. Psalms 52:2. The tongue devises mischief, like a sharp razor, working deceitfully. Man, that tongue is something, ain't it? So we know when we think about it, in terms of the physical, we're dealing with the spiritual counterpart, right? But the tongue, I mean, it can give life or it can what? Cause death. Just think of wars. The wars that have taken place throughout the annals of history. It began with a conversation. People disliking another people, the actions of those people, wanting what that people had. And it began with somebody having an idea. And with that tongue, they devised a plan to go at person, people, and many lives have been lost throughout the annals of history. Somebody raised their hand.
I did.
What'd you say?
I was just gonna offer a hadith from Prophet Muhammad. May peace and blessings be upon him. He said that two things that get you into hell quick: your tongue and your private part. So you have to guard those two very carefully. Huh? Yeah, he said you have to guard those two very carefully because they get you in trouble quick. Hell. Within the hadith is hell.
So that's something that we all have to be mindful of. And there's a correlation between the two. But that's another class. All right. How not to use our tongues. Do not exaggerate in any of our statements. So of course, when I seen this picture, I'm like, wow, that's a good example, right? Sister Deborah, you did a good one on that one, I'm telling you. Yeah, this man, they caught him a little minnow, right? He got a tadpole. But he telling my man, he caught him a doggone massive sized tuna.
That's a shark.
A shark. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, oh my goodness. Bless his heart. So we want to make sure that we're not found guilty exaggerating. Because the thing is this. All of us know people. All of us have met someone that always stretches the truth. Right? Am I right? And so when they begin to say something, because if that's what they normally do,
don't believe them automatically.
Yeah, automatically. And they can actually be telling the truth. But because that's what they normally do, when they open their mouth and start talking about something that they did or they know, it's like, oh my goodness. You tune them out. Right? And that's something that we in this mission definitely don't want nobody tuning us out before we even begin to open our mouth. Because they say this brother or sister not keeping it real. Exaggerating. Represent something as being larger, greater, better, or worse than it really is. Perfect definition, right? So let's look at it. Say, O people of the book, exaggerate not in the matter of your religion unjustly, and follow not the low desires of people who went astray before and led many astray, and went astray from the right path. This is in the Holy Quran, section titled The Fool, 5th chapter, 77 verse. In the book of John. Now let's deal with this first one, because the second one, this is something very important right here. So in the Holy Quran, and we're getting food, whenever we come to the mosque, we get food, right?
Yes, sir.
Because we wouldn't come somewhere not to get fed, to allow us to be able to leave the mosque with the essential tools that we need to deal with what's outside of the mosque, right? So the Holy Quran says it like this: say, O people of the book, exaggerate not in the matter of your religion unjustly. Now, even though the picture that Sister Deborah found for us was right on point, we know that religion is what? A way of life. And as we said, we know people that exaggerates all the time. They are an official hyperbolist, right? Yes, their middle name should be hyperbolist. So we don't want to be found. Now, religion is our way of life. We don't want to be found exaggerating, talking about everything that happens in our lives and inflating.
Yeah.
That's something that we definitely, I mean, even if you think you about to veer off in that area, then that you might want to put the brakes on it. It's not good.
No, sir.
And follow not the low desires of people who went astray before and led many astray. Because in this world, right? Now when you look at that, and follow not the low desires of people who went astray before and led many astray, and went astray from the right path. Exaggeration. Do not exaggerate any of our statements. Now this is on subject, but it's kind of like a little off, but I was watching Chad Johnson, former NFL wide receiver. Real flamboyant, right? Y'all, some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Well, he was being interviewed, and he was talking about, there came a point in his life when he understood that buying a lot of the big jewelry and the diamonds, he was like, that wasn't the way to go. So he was purchasing the not so real jewelry and the diamonds. He said, but because people knew, right, that he had money, they automatically thought it was real. That's something to think about, right?
Right.
Now, just because our perception is that he's a millionaire, and you see something big and shiny in his ear, you say that got to be real, right? You see something big around his neck, that got to be real. He could, because what? He can afford it, right? Well, unfortunately, many of our people are following, right, this imaginary success that we see on, television, on our phones, right? All around us. And they're being led astray, pursuing something that's not even real. It's exaggerated. Are y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah. So, in the book of John, 5th chapter, verse 30 and 31, a perfect example of not exaggerating and keeping it real is Jesus.
Yeah.
And this is what he says. He said, I can't of mine own self do nothing. As I hear, I judge. And my judgment is just. Because I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father, which has sent me. If I bear witness of myself, my witness is not true. So here we are. We know, because we've been taught properly, the true history of Jesus. And who he was and what his mission was, right?
Yeah.
So we know that he was the servant. It was not necessarily, even though we call him master, right? Because he had mastered certain things that you and I have to master, right? The master of self.
Right.
He was a perfect example for us to emulate. And so when it's all said and done, as the people wanted to lift him and put him on a level where he knew, I'm not worthy of that, right? He had to remind the people that I can't do nothing of my own. See, he could have exaggerated and said, yeah, I got the juice, baby. Right? You see me healing the blind, right? Causing the blind to see.
Right.
You see my work with them ears, huh? People can't hear. I roll through, pow. Ding dong. They can hit the doorbell, right? Yeah, he could have been stunned, right?
Right.
Because he was doing some things and people were seeing what he was doing, and you know how those accolades start coming, right? He was being showered. They were showing him some love. He said, no, let's not exaggerate. I don't have the juice. The Father got the juice, right? And I'm just doing the work of the Father that sent me. That's a perfect example right there of not exaggerating. So if Jesus can stay humble and don't exaggerate, right? With all the good that he was doing, that's a good example for us, right?
Right.
All right now, how not to use our tongue. That brother, look at it. He stepped up to the plate trying to help the sister out. It's crucial. So look, do not speak harshly or make fun of less fortunate. Oh, that should have been of less, what? Do not exaggerate or make fun of the less fortunate. And I meant to put that "the" in there. Okay, but you get it. Do not speak harshly or make fun of the less fortunate. Harshly, excessively critical or negative. Fortunate, materially well off, prosperous. So above our caption, right here, our picture, we have never make fun of people less fortunate than you, because you can be up on your luck one day and down on it the next. We know that for sure, right? Fortunate is not guaranteed, right?
That's right.
And when you get it, you have to maintain it and understand that it don't necessarily define you.
Right.
Because we know some people, when they lose it, they lose their life. Or in other words, they take their life. So do not speak harshly or make fun of the less fortunate. Let's see. What does the minister say, as well as the Quran? Surely thy Lord makes plentiful the means of subsistence for whom he pleases, and he straightens. Surely he is ever aware, seer of his servants. Now look, we see this word straightens. Do we understand that straightens means what?
The lesson.
That's right. So surely thy Lord makes plentiful the means of subsistence for whom he pleases. And he straightens. He also pulls back. He deprives some people, right? But surely Allah is ever aware, seer of his servants. Even though you may say you're a servant of Allah, you may not be ready for the blessing of the 100K a year, right? The $500,000, right? Because what that may cause you to deviate, right? You got a lot of money. The next thing you know, you want to begin to act funny, right? Yeah. But look what the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said in this wonderful book titled "Closing the Gap," where we are blessed with an opportunity to read the interviews of the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. The interview, I didn't say interviews, I said interviews, because the wisdom that's dropped, and this was not rehearsed or questions that was shared via email or letter to prep the minister, but these were just conversations, questions and answers. As Brother Jabril, our beautiful Brother Jabril, asked a question, the minister answered the question. There's so much substance in the book, and they cover so many subjects. But in regards to what we're talking about right now, Brother Jabril asks, the Holy Quran says Allah God straightens the means for whom he pleases. He's not trying to destroy the person. Please comment. And oftentimes when it's tight on us, right, we feel destroyed, right? We feel defeated. Miss Louis Farrakhan says, there are some of us whom God keeps in struggle. Wow. That he may teach them lessons through struggle and allow them to teach others through their struggle. The Holy Quran teaches he straightens the means of subsistence for whom he pleases, and he amplifies it for whom he pleases. In both instances, the human being is being tried. So you're being tried with wealth and you're being tried with poverty. Right? If your means are straightened, how will you react to that, where Allah is concerned? If your means are amplified, how will you act toward Allah God, who has amplified your means? In both instances, the human being is under trial. How we react under both circumstances determine how Allah will favor us in the next season.
Yes, indeed.
Right? So your season may be poverty. Your season may be straight right now. Right? But the next season, in terms of subsistence, if you can't do right by Allah, when you don't have hardly anything, right? And say, man, when I come up, right? You understand?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And this is in light of what we're talking about. So I was having a conversation with a brother today, and he was making mention of coming back to the mosque when he got his money up. Now, there's no mystery going, there's nothing spooky about it. But, and so Ibanis, I say, get his money up, you know, when he got his income where he wanted to be before he come back to the mosque, right? All right, so I said it, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, I'm at the mosque, I ain't just kicking it. Well, about 7 or 8 years ago, I was at Savior's Day, and I ran into a brother that I was in the feds with. I served time with the brother, beautiful brother out of Houston. And brother and I were walking in one of the hotels where all the believers were. And a lot of brothers from Houston seen him. And apparently they hadn't seen him at the mosque in a while. So, and the brother, he was very popular in Houston. He was getting a lot of money in the 80s. And he's like a legend in Houston. One of the first, drug dealers. They had a Rolls Royce and, all the trappings and, that comes with that game. And so he can teach very good. He can light the rostrum up. So Allah has given him the gift. But in his mind, he can't function in the ranks of being an active member unless his pockets are bulged. So I can remember we were walking and the brothers say, man, I was greeting them. I said, no, they ain't seen you in a minute. He said, oh yeah, I'm coming back to the mosque. He said, I got my money right. And in my mind, I'm listening to it. And I know he's just one of those flamboyant, brothers. But I'm like, that's not even relevant. Whether you have money or not. But he was talking, it was like, we hadn't seen you in a while. And he was glad to say that when he get back from Chicago, he was going to be back in the mosque because his money right now. So when your money not right, you're gone.
Right.
What's the connection?
Right.
Sister Deborah?
I have a question. Isn't that brother, even if he said it or if he thought it, that people that didn't have money that were in the mosque, he may have looked down upon him. And so he superimposed that whole idea to himself. Because that's what it said about, not making fun of those less fortunate than you. And in your mind, if you've done that, and then you get in that position, and you looking,
Somebody looking at me like that.
yeah.
Why? Right. That's something to think about. Yeah, well, we already know that, we can have it today and lose it tomorrow. But we have to, it's a trial. Something else Louis Farrakhan said.
That's right.
The human being is under trial. How we react under both circumstances determine how Allah will favor us in the next season. And Closing the Gap, page 60 and 61. And straight, I put the definition right here. I put that in there to subject to distress, privation, or deficiency. Wow. The next one is do not swear, lie, or indulge any impure language. Or indulge, yeah, that's what it said. Okay, swear. Use offensive language, especially as an expression of anger. You know, we grew up saying cuss, right? You never heard nobody say, don't be swearing in here. Don't be cussing.
How do you spell that, brother?
Yeah.
How do you spell cuss? C-U-S-S?
I would have spelled it just like that, just like we said. Don't be cussing in here. I think it's C-U-R-S-E. I never heard nobody put the R in it. Yeah, that's curse. Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I got you. I never even looked it up. And so the second definition is take a solemn oath as to the truth of a statement. Impure, mixed with foreign matter, adulterated, morally wrong, especially in sexual matters. Yes, ma'am.
When I came into the ranks, 20-something years ago, nobody used any word that was considered a curse word. Ever. Now, Muslims cuss like it is standard English. Our culture has gone somewhere. Never did you hear a Muslim use a curse word. I'm serious, the culture is so different. And now it's not just the brothers. I heard the brothers start degenerating into that language. I'm just keeping it 100. Now the sisters are degenerating in that same language. Sometimes you can't tell the conversations between people in the mosque from the people in the street say the word Allah. In a conversation in between the customers. I just keep it 100.
And so what you've seen, what you've seen over the years, I actually seen it after I came home, because in a confined and a closed environment, there's more accountability. Where you're around your brothers on a regular basis, keeping in mind that out of my 12 years of being in the belly of the beast, 9 of those were spent in the ranks. My last 9, I sold from state to state, prison to prison. And everywhere I went in the feds while I was soldiering, the brothers' conduct, not everybody was on the same level, but for the most part, everybody, there was consistency everywhere we went, where I went. Now, what I will say is this: if you are around people, and this is the only thing I seen different, that when I came home, because we worked out together. You know, most of us, you know, wherever you work, whether you work in the kitchen, child hall, in a factory, you know, in a maintenance shop, you around somebody that's a believer, right? There's a brother that, you know, you're around, you're studying lessons. I mean, we always studying lessons, trying to memorize them. So the conversation was always high. Might talk about current events or whatever, but the conversation was always high. And if somebody did come around and curse, you could tell it was uneasiness. Even lost found, as we, you know, would call them, would come around, they would check their language around there for a while. But when I came home, it was in 05. Came home right during the time of Katrina. And so in 06, I came home in October of 05. Katrina was in August. I was in a halfway house. But in 06, we done the Hands Around the Dome the 1 year anniversary of Katrina. And I was around, brothers in the ranks. And one brother in particular, I was thinking, I was like, wow, I never heard of F or Y. At that time, 2006, and I accepted in 1996. I'm 10 years into this. And I had never heard nobody curse like that. And the language was just so foul. I'm like, man, this is how I used to curse back in the days. And he was just flowing freely with it. And I asked him, I said, how long you been in the nation? I'm just meeting a brother. I'm like, he must have just accepted a month ago, right? And I've been in the nation off and on for about 5 years. I said, oh, in my mind, I said, that's the problem, off and on. So he on now, but he brings a lot of the off when he on. You understand? And so unfortunately, the gravitational pull of what is makes it difficult to implement what should be. And that's just not children. When we talk about peer pressure, that's also us as adults. Because once again, if you're talking to somebody on a regular basis and they use profanity a lot, and you're comfortable with that person, eventually you're gonna start flowing just like they flow. And the words gonna find their way in your conversation when you get around, your other family members, aka the believers. Sister Gabby?
Well, from what it sounds like, from kind of the perspective that you brought it to, is it possible, like because you used the word culture, in biology, a culture is a petri dish. It's actually like a little plate where you basically put everything that you want inside of that environment to make whatever it is that you want to grow from. And anything that is not conducive to growing whatever it is that you want, you keep it out. And it's called a culture. And so that's what the Most Honorable Muhammad established for us, a culture. And so whenever one of us, in the Nation of Islam would, break one of the restrictive laws or, come under some type of punishment for some type of wrongdoing we might have done, we were put out. Because the messenger understood that in order to, if you want a culture to remain pure, you have to remove the things that are impure. And kind of how you said, it was that when he was allowed to come back in, when he came back in, he brought a lot of that filth, and that filth was allowed to mix with that which was pure, which caused that which was pure to become no longer pure. And so, not saying that, once you do your time, you can't come back in, but I guess since there was no process of filtering out those who came back in, that could have harmed us, in a certain degree, because it corrupted our culture by not having a in-between process to those of us who, when we come back in, because the hardest part about, I guess joining the Nation of Islam is the beginning. But after that, there's really no more obligations on you.
Right.
Once you're in the door, you free to run around and do whatever you want. Nobody's gonna come back and ask you these list of questions no more. Nobody's gonna ask you to write nothing anymore. I mean, heck, you're not even obligated to pay charity. You are, but I mean, nobody's
Accountability is what I'm getting. What you're saying.
So it's like that you come under a lot of scrutiny. There's like when you're coming fresh out the street, you're scrutinized very closely. Like you were saying, you're given a period of time to clean yourself up. But when those of us who go out and then come back in, we never put under that same amount of scrutiny anymore. And give it the time to clean up.
So it's a difference.
Going on what she said, then I want to make one point. But when you're in space, they send you, when you come from out of a spacewalk, they put you in what's called a decompression chamber. So they give you, and then they spray you down with something to decontaminate you before, and then you take off those clothes, and then you go, into the environment where the people are, so you won't bring any contaminants. And that's what a lot of times happens when people are out of the mosque or in bad standing, they pick up, as you said, bad habits. Now I was waiting on this conversation to see exactly what the thread was between his habits. And so it's something that you have to, in order to stop it, you have to literally have a conscious break in your train of thought to stop it. But you said something that was key. When we're having these conversations and these words are flowing, these curse words, I guarantee you, the conversation that we're having when those level of words are flowing are not speaking on divine revelation.
Oh, no.
So we're doing stuff that we're not supposed to do, either idle talk, gossip, slander, something like that that invoke that type of conversation. But when you're speaking on divine revelation, you're not gonna mix those two.
Or in addition to that, it can be out of frustration too.
Yes.
And I have, even in that environment that I came from, it was more, I think what's missing is the accountability part.
Mm-hmm.
Because you couldn't be around soldiers and talk like that and just be on a roll without somebody saying, oh, hold on, black man. Come on.
How do we change?
Accountability. Address it. And you, as a sister, if it's a brother, that's not gonna work. So it will take the brothers to address it with the brothers, and the sisters address it with the sisters. You see? And it's gonna take people that respect. You know, we all should respect each other, but that respect has to be in place.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And just tell the brother to a brother, challenge yourself. Overcome it. That's baby talk. And that's what we would call it. Right? And I know, I mean, you know, I used to curse and flow with it. You know, I come from a family that cursed real good, you know, as we would say. And I didn't think I could stop cursing. But it's amazing that you get around certain people, I wouldn't curse, right?
Yeah.
But just in a comfortable environment, I'm flowing because that's the regular flow, right? And so, but you know, when we have things at the mosque and we have music playing and tables are out, nobody's sitting at the table talking crazy, cursing, right?
Right.
But you take the same body of believers and scatter us out and put us amongst our family, friends, co-workers, etc., and you might have to get a whole different, you know, vibe from that person. It walls the talk, right? You're like, what that brother said over there, right? But so, yes, sir, brother.
I've never seen a brother or a sister out of contact of good character, a moral character in the nation of Islam.
Oh, praise be.
Praise be to Allah. That's awesome. And
That's how it should be, brother.
that's how it should be, right?
Yeah, that's
And that's a
how
good thing.
I always observe.
That's right.
And so, yeah, and so that's beautiful. And so what that means that whatever we have seen, and that brother that I'm talking about, he's no longer in the city, but in prayer. And if I do run across him, maybe he's overcame that bad habit of profanity. But you know, that's the impression that I had for years, right? And opposite attracts. We taught that from the very first day. Even if you came to the mosque and you believed that what you heard to be the truth, believe that it's good for you and your people, want to join on, then in your mind you have to know, even though I'm gonna have some opposition when I leave the mosque, because I've accepted this truth that I know is good for me and my people, I'm going to be ready to deal with that because I know what opposites attract. So eventually I'm going to win them over. But you as the individual, you know you have to put in the work because they're going to ask questions, right? And so you're going to have to be students to be able to answer their questions. And eventually somebody's going to win. Either they're going to beat you out the mosque, right? Or you're going to beat them away from you.
Right.
Somebody's going to win. And inshallah, it's the latter part, right? You will beat them away from you.
I used to actually boast about people that I noticed in the nation. To immigrant Muslim,
Right.
and I used to always boast about character I observed in the nation.
Right. And when it's all said and done, that is why our leader, who sets a beautiful example for us to follow, when he goes, whether he's in the States or abroad, he gives the world an opportunity to see what a free thinking black man really looks like.
Yeah.
And somebody that's compassionate and committed, civilized to helping our people, right?
Yeah.
And that's just the best example that's walking right amongst us right now. We can't find a better example.
No.
And consistency is critical. When you watch him, he's the same.
And Brother Malik, you're around the good ones, so praise you. When you hear somebody act other than themselves.
Right. Yes. Let's see here. So we have a few more verses. In the book of Psalms, 10th chapter, 7th verse, his mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity. Some of these verses we might just have to commit to memory. You know, somebody's cutting the food, you might have to drop that one on. Right?
No.
Yeah. A brother or sister, do you know what Psalms 10th chapter 7th verse is?
Monster.
And you can pull it up right on your phone, smartphone. In the book of Job, 20th chapter, 12th verse. Though wickedness be sweet in his mouth, though he hide it under his tongue. Check that out. And the last one, Job 27, chapter 4th verse. My lips shall not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. That's how we want to be, right?
Yes.
No.
Right.
That's commandments.
That's right. Do not make random and improper assertions. Random, lacking a definite plan, purpose, or pattern.
Yeah.
Improper, not in accord with propriety, modesty, good manners, or good taste. Assertions. Insistent and positive, affirming, maintaining, or defending as of a right or attribute. Do not make random and improper assertions. Don't be all over the place. Right? Right. And also, this can be approached from a lot of different angles. You know, somebody always coming up with a bunch of brilliant ideas but never settle on one.
No.
You've heard a lot of people in your life just say, we need to do this, we need to do that. And it's like they're doing the Thriller dance, you know Thriller, and they, yeah. I mean, just all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And never really settle on a good idea. They may have a lot of them, but let's work one at a time, right?
Yeah.
We got a few minutes left. We're gonna get through the rest of them. Do not speak rashly or violently. Rashly, marked by or proceeding from undue haste or lack of deliberation or caution. Violently, marked by the use of usually harmful or destructive physical force. As I'm reading this sounds familiar. It sounds like the president, right?
I thought of that myself.
Do not speak. Ain't that something?
He was the previous random.
Okay.
He sound like the one.
Now I'm trying to figure out why Sister Deborah didn't put that. You didn't. You supposed to have that picture right there.
You know, I think I did.
Yeah, right here. His picture should have been right there.
I really did.
Wow.
Random assertions. He said he wants the United States to establish the first space force.
Yes, ridiculous. Just whatever comes to his mind. Wow. Do not deceive people by circulating false reports.
Sound like him again?
Why? We don't want to get too political, but I'm telling you, it's something when everybody kind of on the same page in terms of,
Yes.
and this is leadership we're talking about.
Yes.
So as we began earlier, Sister Deborah was talking about this lesson that we're going over, how the laborers, right? It was emphasis put on the laborers dealing with or going over this lesson, internalizing this lesson right here, right?
Yeah.
Because of what? The laborers are considered the leaders.
Right.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, that office, that prestigious office, right, has lost its luster. Yeah, it lost its prestige. It's because it's not even something now. I mean, whoever comes after, man, imagine the work they got to do. Because it's just, It's not
He
even.
did the file, he exposed it.
Okay.
You can have an
Okay.
idiot there and the country is still run, so that person is just a figurehead.
That's right. That's it.
Yeah, that's true.
So do not deceive people by circulating false reports. Deceive to make someone believe something that is not true. Circulating to become well known or widespread.
Yeah.
False reports, a false statement is a statement that is not true. Right? So that kind of coincides with the backbite that we read earlier. Do not offer lip service. Look at this wonderful caption right here. Say what you mean. Mean what you say. For you are a man of your word. Lip service is support for someone or something that is expressed by someone in words, but that is not shown in that person's actions. I see some people sometimes, and they always say what they're gonna do. But it's a few of the same people that every time I see them, and I'm almost to the point that when I see them, I want to hide, like, cause I don't even want to hear it no more, right? Lip service.
Lip service, right?
Like, why are you even saying this again?
Hear yourself?
Yeah. And last but not least, do not use Allah's name falsely or in vain. In vain without success or result. And that's that inshallah with bad intentions. Right?
I love the way.
Yeah, inshallah with bad intentions. You know, doggone well we don't plan to be here, there, or nowhere. Right? And you throw it in the sentence.
But
Yeah,
there,
well, that was earlier.
Money chase.
That was right. Inshallah.
So say translate no.
And for those of our family members that may watch the YouTube clip, inshallah means if it pleases Allah,
Yeah.
right? And so, I mean, in the church we may have said God willing.
Yeah.
So somebody say, I'm gonna come by your house tomorrow to help you to do that, God willing, right? Now, you use God's name in the sentence and you know doggone well you don't have no plan, no desire to go where you say you're going tomorrow, right? But you'll put God in the equation to kind of make it seem like you're gonna come through. But in your mind, you know you're not gonna do it. That's bad, and that's what we definitely don't want to do. Use Allah's name falsely or in vain. So I want to thank you, family, for giving me your time and attention tonight for our first series on the proper handling of people, specifically dealing with how not to use our tongues. And so what we're going to do is internalize what we went over tonight. And next week, we're going to deal with, inshallah, same place, same time, how we should use our tongue. Since we're going to work out how we shouldn't, get all that shouldn't out, remove one, and put the other in. The new mind, right? Out with the old, is bringing the new.
Supreme wisdom, some call it the lessons, but I call it life, actual facts, no guessing.